Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, The Other Way, The Couples Tell All, Let's Watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, everything that I say in reaction to this show and all the reaction videos that I make are completely speculative based on very little information. So keep that in mind. Let's watch.
For answering, for encouraging that behavior. But also I feel like I have a lot of sexual energy, so like there's a lot of repression going on within myself.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to rewind that because I think he's actually starting to give us his conceptualization of what's happening. But it sounds like what he's saying is that he's frequently repressing himself. He's frequently trying to hold back. You know, he's putting rules on himself, like don't reach out, don't do that. So that's starting to sound like a compulsion. You know, some people have compulsions like that. Some people have compulsions where they bite their nails or they pull their hair or they eat ice cream late at night and they just can't stop. You know, there's nothing wrong with eating ice cream late at night, but it's one thing to like be desperately trying to stop and you just can't stop. Or smoking a cigarette. Some people do have compulsions along the lines of this where, you know, and it's hard to know why each individual has the compulsions, but the various conceptualizations that seem to make sense is that for some people, they saw compulsive behavior in their family and they emulate it. Another one is you can have a genetic predisposition to compulsive behavior, addictive behavior. Another is that you're trying to run from something. So when something bad, you know, like he has a fight with Alina and he's faced with trying to look at himself or look at what he's done wrong or look at how his life is falling apart or something. And instead, it's easier to fall into a compulsive, addictive routine or a ritual because it distracts you. Another is that some people just have certain neurological makeups that their motivation for doing certain things is incredibly intense. It just overwhelms. It's an itch that just cannot be satisfied until you do the thing. And I don't know, it's just sounding more and more like that. But so is it compulsion or is it just he wants to have a different sort of a life? He wants to not be married. He wants to flirt. He wants to be with a lot of different women, which there's nothing wrong with that. But why would you victimize Alina in the process or lie to people in the process? Maybe we'll figure it. But let's rewind that because I think this is kind of critical that we hear again.
But I said you're going to have that happen to you and you need to ignore it all.
It's my fault for answering, for encouraging that behavior. But also I feel like I have a lot of sexual energy, so like there's a lot of repression going on within myself.
So there are two categories. I've worked with a lot of people like him, you know, of various genders. And for some people on the nefarious side, they are immature, they are callous, they don't care about other people's feelings, and they want to be able to do whatever they want to do and don't really care about their spouse's feelings, and they're just like, but I want to, you know, they're like a child. It's like, and some people can retain that childishness and that immaturity. It's like you're 5 years old and you know, there are 3 cookies and you want all 3 of them. And your parents say, if you eat all 3 of them, then your 2 siblings won't be able to have any cookies. And not all kids, but some kids will be like, screw you, I want all 3. Like, I don't care about you. It's all about me. And I want all, you know, we kind of expect kids, again, some 5-year-olds can be extremely like, oh, you know, here you go. But it wouldn't be unusual for a kid to be narcissistically self-centered and lack of, you know, consideration of others oriented. So there are people like that who just don't really register other people's feelings. They don't care, and it's all about themselves. But I want to, and if you're traumatized early in life, this can happen, or you're neglected or abandoned. Sometimes you can be kind of stuck in a mindset. Also, if you have a life where you've had a lot of things taken away from you, emotions or emotional attunement, or even just things like your parents took all your toys and sold them for drugs or something, you can feel like, hey, I deserve my fair shake, and so it's my time now. And to consider other people's feelings is not fair to me, because I've been ripped off so often in life. Now, of course, your spouse had nothing to do with that, what happened to you back in the day, but you feel like it kind of applies. Anyway, so a lot of different reasons why someone would just not care about other people's feelings, and so sometimes they'll exhibit this behavior because of that, where they're just like, well, I feel like I have to suppress all the time, and I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, dude, you got married, so this is your choice, so just deal with it, But the way he talks about it is like, this is unfair to me. I have to suppress my own sexual urges and my desire for, female attention, and I want to see all the boobs of the world, and how come I can't do that? And it's like, dude, you're a grown man. This is your choice. Okay, so is it that? Is it just like a lack of empathy? I've also heard some people talk this way. Again, regardless of, usually when it's a man talking this way, it's interpreted more as a lack of empathy. When a woman is talking this way, it's usually interpreted differently because of our associations with gender. But anyway, so the people that I heard in this other category, where they're coming from is they have very little understanding of who they are as a human being, and they are just slotting themselves into this lifestyle of monogamy and marriage without ever really knowing if it's made for them or not. And you could imagine someone in a strict religion like LDS, be it Mormons, being prone to that, right? Because one, you're expected to do that, just get married, have a bunch of kids. Two, you can't have sex until you're married, so that all those sexual urges, you're just like, marriage starts looking very, very enticing to people that wouldn't normally if they were just allowed to have sex. And so for some people, I've seen them, they just really don't know who they are. And you can be 55 years old and not really know who you are yet, and just feel like, did anyone ever ask me if this is what I wanted to do, including themselves? So there's a possibility that for him, who knows, but that given the pressure of the church, given the pressure of his family, given his just lack of self-awareness, he just went headlong into this monogamy marriage thing real quickly and never stopped to think, is this really what I want? Is this really who I am? And there's a difference there, and he's finding himself like really fighting against like 99% of his personality that doesn't want to be married, maybe not even to Alina. So so I've worked with people like that too, where we explore who they are and what they want, and it can get kind of weird, because you can be in the middle of a marriage with a bunch of kids and never had the luxury or the time to really think like, is this the life that have I ever wanted this before? And one of the impulses you'll have when you're in a marriage that you don't really want to be in and never did, you'll start fantasizing about being with other people, because that's the natural escape hatch, if you will. But there's a lot of different escape hatches. You could have an escape hatch of emotional infidelity, where you want to have long conversations in a romantic way with other people, or maybe you're in a job that you don't like, but you've never really asked the question, is this the career that I want? And so you find yourself kind of slacking on the job a lot and procrastinating about a lot of things. A lot of procrastination is actually because of this, because people don't really know who they are or what they want, and they've forced themselves into an activity or an obligation that doesn't make sense given their purpose. They don't even know why they're on the planet. So I don't know, maybe we'll find out which of those two options it is for him.
It would be easier if we were able to find a way where I wouldn't have to repress these urges and these feelings as much.
I think I had the same face as Armando. I think I've said this before, that Armando I find the most relatable. We kind of look similar in a certain. If I had my hair real kind of slicked back, I used to have glasses actually like that. A younger me, if you will. But anyway, and by the way, I didn't make hardly any videos about Kenny and Armando, but boy, all the crying, all the beauty, all the wonderfulness, the father, the family, it was just great. And anyway, point is that Armando's like, huh? So he's saying it'd be nice if we could, I think what he's saying, if we could have an arrangement where I could be with other women. How does that match up with his religion? But anyway, now I've talked about this before. There's nothing wrong with polyamory, but I don't think Alina's interested in that. And why did you marry her when you wanted to do this? Now that she's kind of roped in. Now, Alina can leave at any time. And I think people really need to remember that, because I think a lot of the discourse around Stephen and Alina is that Alina is this hapless idiot. She's a grown woman and she's young, she's 20 or 21, but she's not an idiot. And she is presented with the data, and she has her mom. She has a support. She's not alone. There are people, Masha, her mom, saying, hey, look at reality. She is making a choice. And, so she's not a hapless victim. She could leave at any moment, and maybe she will. So if she stays and he's not abusing her, he's not like, and I don't think he is. It depends on your definition of abuse, but I don't get the impression that he's like, you better, not leave me or else I'm going to get you, or I'm going to, tear you down emotionally. Maybe there's some of that subtle things that are happening, but anyway, I'm not saying Alina is an idiot or something. I'm just saying that when Stephen does these things and she stays, she's essentially saying, I don't want you to do those things, but it's kind of okay if you do. And maybe it is okay to her. Someone actually said in the comments that in Alina's neck of the woods, and I don't know if this is true, I think this was someone from that neck of the woods, that if you can find a man who isn't an alcoholic, like you marry that guy. Because in her neck of the woods, there's a lot of people struggling with alcoholism. I don't know if that's true, and so for her, maybe she just has an extremely low bar of acceptability regarding behavior. The other possibility is that she's just like, I don't want him to cheat, but I don't really care that much. I love him because of all the wonderful things. We just don't really know. We would impose our own, we can impose our own sort of sensibilities on this relationship. So I think that we just have to keep that in mind. But it sounds what he's saying is, I want the relationship to be open. So maybe that's an option. Maybe they can talk about that, and maybe there's an arrangement. She can date other people as well. I don't know. Maybe they'll get into it.
What urges are you talking about?
Oh my gosh. Okay. For some reason, I really want to have a threesome. And
Oh, God.
My God, this is going way too much too.
Okay, Stephen.
Okay, again, usually when we hear men saying this, they're a lech and disgusting and a creep. But when we hear women saying this, we're like, oh, fun. They want to spice up their sex life. So this is a highly gendered reactivity to this. And I don't want to emulate that. And I want to remind people of that men can legitimately say, I want a threesome. Now, wanting a threesome, fantasizing about a threesome, asking your spouse in a respectful way, can we have a threesome, is all fine. Pressuring your wife, which happens a lot, by the way, because men are taught that they're entitled to these kinds of things, that they're taught to really orient their lives towards sex and away from emotional vulnerability. A lot of men, their only avenue of emotional vulnerability and closeness is through sex. So it's no wonder that a lot of men orient their lives through sex. When you don't allow men to hug, to cry, to ask for help, to express their inner, experience with other people, but we do allow them to basically do that through sexuality, then, you're going to route your personality through that one activity and that one thought process. But anyway, so for some people, men will pressure. They'll be like, look, if you don't let us have a threesome, I'm going to divorce you. And then the wife is like, well, I guess I don't have a choice. And then or just the unrelenting pressure that some men will put on women. It's just like, come on, let's do a threesome. And so what I'll say is that, people do threesomes, and polyamory is a thing. Open relationships is a thing. And that's totally fine. There's a way of talking about it that respects your spouse. And there's a way of revealing that prior to getting married so that everyone understands what they're getting into. But when we think about the whole constellation of behaviors that we've seen from this guy, there's a lot of indications of a problem there, of self-entitlement, of self-centeredness, of lack of empathy, of callousness, of not considering other people's feelings, lack of maturity, just a lot of indications of someone that just is going to create a wake of difficulty. Because you would think that someone recently married on a reality TV show would say, yeah, I kind of want to do this threesome thing at one point, but I'll hold off because we just got married. I'm pretty sure Alina doesn't want to do that. So, the onslaught of issues that she's had to deal with in a short amount of time should really tell her what kind of relationship that she is headed into.
Wow. Okay, and that's something that I don't know. It's just like I had told Alina about this nearly since the beginning. That it's something that I wanted to try.
I didn't know how to react. So I was like very lost and confused. And
Okay, that's interesting. So I retract my accusation that he didn't say, and it sounds like Alina is agreeing that he has, from the beginning of their dating relationship, expressed an interest, which I just have to, I just think, okay, it's fine, don't yuck other people's yum, it's fine. He has an interest, but I just find it to be incredibly immature. It's such a childish thing. And it's fine to be childish about sex, but to be like, ooh, I've always wanted to try that, I don't know. Just, if I were his friend, I would say, well, anyway, point is that, so if we use this as a jumping off point, you've always wanted to try a threesome because you're curious, I guess. Or it's a fantasy, whatever. You've wanted to do it. Nothing wrong with that. You're getting serious with someone and you say, hey, I've always wanted to try a threesome. What do you think? And Alina, we could absolutely imagine her saying, I don't know. And then she says she's confused. Okay. Confused. What? Maybe she'll go into detail around that. I could see her, because she's clearly and has been in love with him from the beginning, right? So she's in love with him. She wants to be with him. And he starts talking about, she's 110% in it. And he starts talking about threesome, and in her mind, I'm guessing what was going through her mind was, well, I don't want to do that. It's not interesting to me. And is that going to be a problem in a variety of ways? But I don't want to lose him. So maybe I could do it in the future. I mean, and I don't know if that really happened, but we could see that happening. And if it did happen, then that, helps us to understand where he's coming from. That he's like, look, it's something I always wanted to do, and I told her from the beginning, and she never said no, and I haven't done it, but I've been asking her because I'd really like to do it. So if she's never said absolutely not, or I don't think I want to be with a guy who wants to do that and does all those other things. You know, she stays in it. She's enabling it, if you will. You know, through her complacency or her confusion, she's encouraging it on a certain level. And so, I mean, it's not victim blaming, but anyway, I don't know if there's a victimization thing happening here. Because, you know, just imagine in this instance, just imagine for yourself, you've always wanted to try something. You know, you've always wanted to try some kind of sexual thing. And whether it's a threesome or, you know, something else. And it's always been something you want to do. And you just ask your partner, is it okay? You know, could we maybe do this sort of thing? You know, there's nothing wrong with that. So, but again, when you look at the grand scheme of all the behaviors, there's so many things pointing towards, you know, the fact that he sticks his tongue out. There's the 9 women. There's the Masha. There's the fact that he was basically seemingly stringing Alina along while he's having sex and dating other women. Probably in his mind, he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be with Alina, but I'll lead her on, you know, in case it doesn't work out with these other people. You know, it's just an overall constellation of a lack of empathy.
I don't think that it's abnormal to have, you know, different sexual desires. What I find wrong here is throughout, you know, these past months, we saw Stephen trying to show Alina the Book of Mormon and just talking about church and how to do right.
Yes.
But he's been doing the complete opposite.
It's interesting. There are 3 Mormons on this stage. There's Stephen and now Alina, I guess, and Armando and Corey. What is it about Mormons? I mean, there's been other Mormons on this show too, right? I mean, if I was to speculate, given that I grew up with a lot of Mormons, you know, it's a good chunk of Mormons in my hometown of Sammamish and Issaquah. They do these, what do they call them? What do they call them? Where they go to another country or they go to another place. Oh, I wish I remembered. There's a word for it. But anyway, I'm sure someone will say in the comments below. I think it's usually 2 years, I think, and they go to another country or they just go to somewhere in the United States and they, you know, do that thing where they go door to door and they have the backpack and the tie and the Book of Mormon. Have you heard of the Book of Mormon? And I need to look it up. Missionary. It's a mission that they go on. Yeah, they go on a missionary mission. Something like, is that the word? I think that's the word. Anyway, so maybe because of that, they can become really exposed to a lot of different cultures. And maybe that lends itself to the precursors of a 90-day fiancé storyline. But anyway, what Armando is saying is, which is great, he's saying, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do various different sexual things. You know, you have desires. The problem is that you are so adamant about living the life of a Mormon to Alina, but not for yourself.
It's very important to me. I did grow up in the LDS church.
You slept with some, you're...
Okay, but I'm not going out there and saying, like, I am an active member of the church and doing these things because I'm not following the standards that the church has set.
Okay, interesting. Again, I'm often wondering about this, and I'm glad that he's clear. So Corey is saying he grew up Mormon, but he's not following the Mormon code anymore. And Armando isn't either. And Corey is saying, but you, Stephen, are trying to, and yet you're not.
Stephen represents himself as an active member of the church, and that is what I have such a big problem with.
One time, Nelson Mandela was asked if he was a saint, and he said, I'm only a saint if you consider a saint a sinner who keeps on trying.
Yikes. He's done this before. Sean's face and Ellie's face. Yeah, yikes. So when, just in and of itself, you're like, okay, do people, and I've said this from the beginning, do people within a religion have models of understanding relapses and sin and making bad choices? Yeah. Not everyone, of course, but I've seen a lot of religious people who have really robust understandings of temptation, of mistakes, of redemption, of confession, of sin, of asking for forgiveness. getting back on the wagon, that kind of thing. And to shame yourself and to allow other people to shame you, actually, we understand, is not conducive to health. When you relapse, when you're trying to not, use heroin anymore, and you have a relapse, you want to fight against the shame of like, oh, I'm a terrible person. Because when you do that to yourself, then you're more likely to feel down and more likely to need to use. You need to be like, was a bad choice. Let's look at it. Here are the things that I did that led up to it. Here are the triggers. Let's learn from it. What could I have done differently to avoid having the relapse? Get systematic about it and move forward. It's all about today and the next hour. Like, you're going to be sober today. Don't think about the past. That use it as a tool, but don't dwell on it. And it's true in religious circles as well, and really life circles, right? That shaming yourself, and Nelson Mandela, it has this quote. But again, when you think about and it was true, I think, what was it, in the middle of the season when Stephen was saying this as well. If it was in the midst of extreme remorse and sorrow and dedication to getting back on the wagon, then you'd say, oh, okay. But it's not. He is continually sinning in his model, going against God, going against his religion, going against the covenant of his marriage with Alina. And then immediately invoking Nelson Mandela quotes to exonerate him. It's such a weird way of, you could imagine being Alina and being confused. You could imagine being, oh, okay, especially if you're a little naive. He's like, well, he's apologizing, he's taking responsibility, and he's, Nelson Mandela did say that thing. It could be very convincing, right, that it's going to get better when at the same time, talk about speaking out of both sides of your mouth. At the same time, he is flirting with women online. Do we think that he's not currently flirting with women online? He's probably always doing it, right, to some extent, because he has shown no ceasing of that behavior. Maybe it's episodic, but it keeps happening. The analogy that I'll give is someone walks up to you and like pushes you down, and you get up and you say, hey, don't push me down. And the person that pushes you down says, oh, I'm so sorry. You know what? Nelson Mandela said that you shouldn't shame yourself. And you're like, okay, well, don't do it again. Yeah, I'm so sorry. 2 minutes later, push you down again. Hey, I'm just so sorry. I just keep making these mistakes. I'm going to really rededicate myself to not pushing people down. And, and you start talking back like, hey, there's something wrong with, hey, we don't want to shame people for, redemption. And it's all about moving forward in life. It's okay. Push you down again. You're like, what is wrong with this equation here?
That is true, but that's why, Stephen, being part of the LDS faith does entail certain responsibilities, and you're not living up to the standards. That's just that.
And that would not be what I would focus on. For someone outside of the religion to comment on, everyone has their own path when it comes to religion and their relationship with God or whatever. So I don't know if I would comment on that from the outside, because that's his life. And it's between him and God, and we can't really comment on that, in my opinion. What we can comment on is, you're hurting Alina. Like, why do you keep hurting her? You are, you're saying like it's really so hard to suppress. It's not that hard. Unless you have an addiction, then go to therapy. But you decided to get married. You made this choice. So yeah, you have to suppress these urges. You have to stop doing those things, And if you can't suppress it, that doesn't mean like, well, you're just going to have to forgive me. It's like, no, you got to like really apologize and get help. Don't just say like, well, this is who I am, live with it. All right, well, that is it for that episode. If you want to join the conversation below, or on Discord or the subreddit or the Facebook or the Instagram, you can do that by clicking the link below or just going to those places. And as always, be charitable towards each other, give each other the benefit of the doubt, support each other, be nice. There's a lot of really toxic communities on the internet, and I would really like to think that our community would not be that way. I'm sure y'all are really nice people, kind people, and let's exhibit that on the internet. Let's make the internet a better place. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.